Ladies and gentlemen, I thought that we should talk about bias, prejudice, and racism. There is actually quite a lot of confusion about what exactly they are nowadays, because the universities are teaching kids that racism is a word for any sort of prejudice or bias at all. They teach the kids racism is bad, and that if you say we should do away with food stamps, you're a racist because you're prejudiced against the poor. And I thought that we should talk about that for a second. Racism comes from the root word race. Now, I know that there aren't really any races. I know that we're all just blended with gray fuzzy lines from one region to another around the world. We are more genetically homogeneous than any other animal. But that doesn't mean that we can stop using the word race to refer to the different colors of skin and the different appearances of people. The word race needs to continue to mean that. Otherwise, they're wiping out its meaning. Race doesn't have a meaning if it just means the word bias or prejudice. Now we have three words: bias, prejudice, and racist, and they all mean the same thing. Well, what about somebody who hates people because they're black? Well, is that racist or not? Because if that's racist, then you're not a racist for saying you think food stamps should be done away with. Well, Ron Hole, I Once Was Him tunes in on this in one of my videos. I believe it's the last day of school. First day of summer, last day of school at the academy. And he says, Mr. Cropper is biased. And everyone's biased in some way, and bias is bad. And someone says, I think being, it's 444 Dean Machine, I believe, says, I think being biased is good. Watch his video on extremism. Sometimes it's good. And Rod Hole, I Once Was Him, says, well, I agree with his video on extremism, but still, having a prejudice is bad. Now, that means that Rod Hole, I Once Was Him is once again confused. He was the one who did the video saying selfishness is bad and what's wrong with me and where's my brain at? How could I possibly say selfishness is good? And he gave the example of the old man burning his money when he dies because he doesn't want anyone else to have the money. And I made the point that's not selfish because he didn't even help himself. You have to, at the very minimum, you have to help yourself if you're going to be selfish. Otherwise, what the hell is that word for? So if you're not going to help yourself, you're not being selfish. And if you are prejudiced or bias, then that's bad in some way. And Rod Hole, I Once Was Him is prejudice or bias against people that have prejudice or bias. And that's bad of Rod Hole to have that attitude. I don't necessarily actually think that it is bad for him to have that attitude. I have that attitude against people who believe that Mormons are the only true religion, or people who believe that atheists are all scum-sucking pigs, or people who believe that selfishness is bad. I'm prejudiced against them. I'm racist in absolutely no sense or context whatsoever. I'm the least racist person that you know. I really, really, really dislike people who are willfully stupid, though. And a lot of black people are smart, so I can't hate them on the basis of their skin color. I can have statistical judgments against them. 95% of the black people I ever knew didn't care about anything except for sports and drugs. Well, I didn't know a lot of black people then, did I? Wait a minute, actually I did. I lived in Connecticut for 7 years. I lived in the middle of a slum where most of the people were black and Puerto Rican, and there were a few Polish people scattered in there. So I have actually known quite a few of them. And on that basis, I still can't be racist because 95% of the white people I know didn't care about anything except for sports and beer instead of sports and drugs. For the black people, most of the white people I know are from Utah. I grew up around them, and mostly only interesting thing in their entire life is sports. But I'm still not racist against whites. I'm prejudiced, though. And being prejudiced is a good thing. Rod Hull, I Once Was Him is very confused by the multiculturalist clatter in Europe. I believe he's from Britain. And he can't straighten out in his head what it means to be for or against something that's good or bad. If you are against something that's bad, you have a prejudice or a bias against it. Well, isn't that a good thing? Doesn't Mr. Rod Hull, I Once Was Him, have a prejudice or a bias against racism? Maybe he needs to rethink his thought that bias and prejudice are bad. Maybe they're actually like a knife that you can use for good or bad. Maybe that's what they are. And if you use it wrong, it'll cut you. I don't know how we bring that into the analogy, but what the hell? Take it with you.